I love working with individual leaders and leadership teams because I know the impact and the difference that they make, not just to the business, but to how people feel about coming to work and their level of, how fulfilled they are.
What your thoughts are on women supporting women? Do you feel like it's all just branding and taglines, or do you feel like it's actually a reality?
There are a number of initiatives that I work with and people that I know of who are doing really important things in this space.
Yeah, I think we feel like what we're doing is always life and death.
Absolutely.
Like it's always everything on the line all of the time.
Absolutely. And it's never quite good enough.
Hello and welcome to No One Told Me This, the podcast where we unpack what it really means to be a woman in leadership. The ambition, the identity crises, the cultural tensions, the glass ceilings, and those that we build ourselves. My name is Jess. I'm your host, a certified leadership coach, and your honest big sister in the boardroom. This is not what they teach you in the leadership handbooks. This is the stuff that no one told us, but we're saying out loud. So today's episode, I am really excited and I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with this guest because she has been an absolute powerhouse in her field and in her space, and I'll let her talk you through what that is. But she's got a lot of experience and a lot of stories that she can bring to us to help us to understand what her experiences have been like as a woman in leadership. Not only has she worked in various corporations and very impressive names, but she's also built her own business from the ground up. And it would be really great to hear what that experience has been like as a leader, as an owner, as a stakeholder. So without further ado, I have the pleasure of introducing you to Alison Munn.
Thanks,
Hi,
Jess.
welcome to the pod.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
Good.
Great to talk to you.
Firstly, how are you feeling today?
Good. Really looking forward to our conversation. We've spoken lots about these sorts of subjects before, and you know that they're really important to me. So I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Good. Well, Alison and I actually met earlier in the year, and actually I was at a conference as a delegate and Alison was a speaker. So one of the things that really stood out to me is just the way that she kind of owned the room and the content that she was talking about. We were all super engaged in it. And I remember after I came to talk to you, introduced myself, and then we kind of, just started talking and decided to keep in touch. But it was really inspirational for me to see women talking about, we were talking about L&D and HR and just kind of being able to build impactful teams, empower leaders. We were talking about all of these different things, and it was really interesting to hear your take on it, to see the engagement in the room. I thought this is someone that kind of does the things that I do, and it's really good because you've gone before me as well. So there's lots that I can learn, and I'm sure there's lots that other people that are listening can learn as well. So what I would like to start with, if we can begin here, is who are you? So beyond the LinkedIn bio and the job title, who is Alison Munn?
So who is Alison Munn? Well, first and foremost, I'm a mother to two, I say boys, they're men actually now, and wife of Jason. So family is key and critical to me, the most important thing in my life. I'm also fortuitous enough to have 3 businesses, one in Dubai, 2 in London,
nice.
One that I co-own with a partner, but 2 that I own by myself, and one with my husband.
Okay.
And ultimately, what I am is a woman who's enjoying a stage in my life of being able to do what I want in terms of my career, but also help others. And I think that's really important to me in terms of the career I've chosen and the role that I do at work.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love it when I hear women say that they're actually in a place where they're, fulfilled, like doing things that they actually want to do. I think that's what a lot of women want to do. And maybe depending on circumstances or life stage, they might not be, have the freedom to kind of do those things yet. But another question I have for you is, if your younger self could see you now, so with all that you have and who you're saying you are now, if your younger self could see you now, what would surprise her?
Well, actually, I think the piece around having 3 businesses, and actually one really impactful memory I have from my younger self starting in my career was when I went for an interview with one of the big consulting houses. They turned me down, by the way. And after 3 interviews and a really intensive situation, I really wanted that role. They turned me down and I asked for some feedback and they said it was because my sleeves were too long. So it really, I know, it was a strange piece of feedback, right? I'm
Never
sure there
had
might have
that
been more to it than that, but not that they were forthcoming to give. So to your question, what would surprise me, when I was so devastated and not getting that role and really felt like, how will I move into the consulting world? How will I bring to the fore my passions and be able to do the role that I want to do? Actually, now going head to head with that and some other of those large corporations, and often winning business because we can have a more personal approach, I guess, is something that if at that moment when I got my too long sleeves feedback, I would have ever believed would just have seemed unbelievable.
That is a very interesting story, because when they said it to you, I wonder what your reaction was. Were you just like, oh, okay?
It felt like an unusual piece of feedback, and I wasn't sure what to do with it apart from take my
roll your sleeves
or wear a short sleeved dress as I am now. So maybe is has somehow subliminally impacted me. But actually, I think it's only in later years that I've really reflected on that was a really unhelpful piece of feedback, actually, and how feedback can be so helpful, but that particular wasn't. But I didn't focus on that because I focused on what I think many people, certainly women, but I think people in general focus on, which is I wasn't good enough, I didn't get it, it's a barrier to where I'm going to. How will I overcome this? Will I overcome this?
Yeah.
Rather than maybe saying, well, that wasn't the right fit for me, and maybe, there are other opportunities that are way more matched to my experiences and what I can bring.
Yeah, that's gonna stick with me, by the way. I don't know how I'm gonna forget it. Okay, so when we talk about that, what would you say is one defining moment that has shaped the way that you lead?
Many moments have shaped how I lead, but actually I think I can really look back to my childhood, actually, and some of my influences in childhood. So my parents were a huge influence to me, but actually one of the key people who helped me shape how I lead today, and even the career that I chose to do, was a family friend, Pam Pinder, sadly no longer with us, but an absolute powerhouse of a woman. She had two businesses in the UK, really at a time where there were very few female CEOs and certainly founders in the world that she was operating in, which was recruitment, payroll, people. So I did some work experience with her, and watching her lead just inspired me and sticks with me today. The way that she brought her energy and her passion to everything she did, her commitment not only to her business but to the people that she worked with and worked for. So with her team, but also with her customers. And I think that's really defined how I lead today. And in fact, I had a piece of feedback from a very dear client of mine who's become a friend over the years recently. Actually, she gave the feedback to my son and said, do you know why we work with Insight Worldwide and why, I find working with your mum and her team so well? And she said, it's because she cares as much as I do.
Oh,
and I think that was a really nice piece of feedback. And it was true.
Yeah.
And I think that really stems from that, how I saw Pam leading her team and organisation.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful example as well. I'm thinking from what you saw of Pam when you got to kind of witness her in action, when it became your turn and you stepped into a position of leadership for the first time. I don't know, for some people it's just being a senior or maybe assistant manager or whatever stands out to you when I ask it. But did you experience any imposter syndrome, any maybe I shouldn't have this job, maybe I'm not qualified enough, maybe, have you ever gone through that? And if so, how did you overcome it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think particularly when I was in the corporate world, it took a long time to really feel, particularly as I was fortunate enough to accelerate through a number of roles, but thinking, how am I going to do this? One of my earliest management roles was working for a company called Marconi, and I had a great idea, I thought, and I took it to my boss, who said, I think it's a great idea too, let's take it to the board. So I went all eager, and then they said, yeah, okay, go on then. Go and do this. You can do this job. And at that moment, that great idea and all my confidence in myself and the great idea pretty much evaporated now that it was mine to deliver.
Yeah.
So how did I overcome that? I think one thing that I have always tried to think about is that whole piece around, is this something that I can control, or can I influence it? And if I can't, not to worry about it. So in that circumstance, it was really having a talk to myself actually and saying, what can I control? Well, I can control how I approach this, how much effort I put into it, how I feel about it, etc. I can't necessarily control definitely what the outcome could be, but I can try to make it more likely to be successful. Yeah. So I guess that's sort of one of those fundamental core parts of who I am as well, that I like to try to work out what might make a difference that I can do and focus on those things rather than focus on the things that I can't control and maybe like how other people might perceive me, etc. It's easier said than done, of course.
It is so much easier said than done. Those that know me know that I'm always talking about control the controllables. Right. And it sounds so cool when you say it. Yeah. And when you find yourself in the situation, you're like, oh my God, everything that I'm worrying about is something that I cannot control.
Absolutely.
Literally everything.
Absolutely. And I think you can catastrophize as well then.
100%.
It's, one thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing. Highly unlikely to all, happen in that way, but it's not rational necessarily. And I think that's where, having people around you who can hold the mirror up to you and can tell you to, calm down, take a step back. Yeah. Or having things in your life that just take you away from, stressful situations. And for each person that's different. And I work with a lot of people in terms of coaching female and male leaders from different places across the world in very senior roles. And for each one of those, what that stress relief is very different. Yeah. But knowing that about yourself, I think, can give you some level of sanity and control.
Definitely. I know that perspective is everything. And also knowing that our brains are wired to keep us safe. So you will automatically think of the worst case scenario and then try to find your way out of it. Like, what will I do if all of the things go wrong? But we very rarely sit and think like, what if this goes right? What if this is the best decision I've ever made? What if everyone loves it? You know what I mean? So sometimes it's just also being able to visualize the opposite.
Absolutely.
Of, what if it just is amazing and then it opens up other opportunities and on and on and on like that.
Absolutely. And I'm also a great believer in goal setting as well and saying actually where do I want to be, or what would I like to achieve, or what things are important to me, and trying to focus on those things where things maybe aren't going as you want them to be, or you're getting those waking in the night moments thinking about things that are completely outside of your control.
What I'm interested to know is any values that you feel that you have that you've had to fight to protect. What values have you fought to protect in your journey so far?
I think the biggest conflict around values was for me when I was probably in the midpoint of my career, and I could have taken my career in a few different directions. And it was all around, integrity, which is critical and important to me. And sometimes when you're working in large corporations, there is a balance between what is right for the situation and a customer and what might be right for the corporation or the company. And I think that's the piece for me that was the biggest struggle and was something that I wasn't willing to compromise on, and comes back to the piece now in terms of why I was so proud of the feedback from my client around caring, because I want to do the right thing. I want to do the things that I believe in. So that for me was the biggest struggle, and actually was a critical driver towards knowing that I wanted to set up my own business and be able to have a business that operated in the way that I wanted it to, that ultimately was centered around what I believed was right for the situation and the customer.
Yeah. I share that with you because integrity is like my number one value. And I think over life, you don't really know what your values are until they're tested. I think that's when you know if it is truly a value or if it's not a value. True. And we all kind of say, yeah, this is important to me, that's important. And then we get put in the situation and then we realize, oh, maybe something else actually was more important when my back's against the ropes and I've got to make a decision. And integrity for me has been really, really important. I think as leaders, we probably don't realize how important it is to be someone of integrity that gets buy-in from your team, that knows how much to communicate, when to communicate it, who to communicate it to. There are no weird secrets. There are no weird, you know what I mean? It just is what it is. And people can come to rely on you that if Alison says this thing, then that's what it is. Rather than she said this thing, well, I'm not sure if it's really that or if she's just trying to, pull the wool over my eyes. So it's really, really important.
Absolutely. And I think trust is just such an important quality to have. You have to be able to work with people that you trust and have relationships that are based on trust. Very easy to break trust and hard to build, but it's so critical. And I think it's such an important factor in organisations now. And one of the things that I think many people that I work with and talk to really struggle with in terms of, what is that? What is the contract between me and my company? Not the written contract, but exactly. Sitting underneath that and being asked to do things that are contrary to your values. Is an awful place for any person to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about some of your experiences before you got to where you are now. Yeah. So when you were in the, let's say, corporate world, if that's the right way to phrase it. And I'm wondering if you ever had any of these experiences where you had a man as a manager and you had a woman as a manager, and you ever felt like you got on better with one more than the other. And I say this because there is some rhetoric sometimes where women say that I can't work with women, or I can't have a female manager. So I've heard this plenty of times. Women say, I can't have a female manager. We just don't seem to get along. There's a lot of conflict. Whereas when I have a male manager, I feel so much more supported, or I feel, like the job is just the job. There aren't any other things to it. Have you ever had any experience of this, or just what have your experiences been like having, let's say, a senior management that's male or female?
Well, I mean, I've had both male and female leaders. Sadly, many of my bosses were men, because in many of the organisations that I worked in, and I worked in technology and engineering and those sorts of things, were more dominated by men in senior roles. And actually you saw that funnel effect as you go through the organisation, where less and less women are in senior roles. I mean, I think for me, I haven't experienced a female boss that's been difficult because of being female. I've certainly had difficult bosses. I think we probably all have. Or if you haven't, you're probably one of the real fortunate ones.
Yeah.
I have heard actually that some women do find it difficult to work with other females. And I think it's back to that trust position, because for me, trust is around, it's around, someone that's reliable, someone that's credible, but actually it's around the whole piece around self-orientation. How much is it all about them? And how much is it about you both being a team together? So for me, the critical leaders that I have worked with who have had my back, who I know are doing the right thing for me. And I can remember actually one female boss who I was on secondment to Australia, and the company was going through some very difficult times, and I was brought back from secondment, and sadly there were a lot of redundancies, and it was a really hard time for the business that we were going through. And I remember getting off the plane, phoning my boss, and she said to me, "This is going to be really hard. What's happening is going to test you completely. But don't worry, I'm here for you. You can always pick up the phone. You will learn so much, and I am here when you need me." And having her have my back like that was incredible. I don't know whether at that stage, we're talking, 20 years ago now, whether I would have had the same more emotional conversation with a male boss. I've had some phenomenal male bosses, but I think she connected with me on an emotional level. That was maybe something I hadn't experienced in a traditional line manager relationship with me before. And it was a defining moment for me, because it was around looking after the whole person, not just in terms of, the fact that I work for them. Yeah.
That's really, really interesting to hear. I think it's a conversation that I want to keep going, because everyone has had different experiences with this. I as soon as I graduated university, I had a job in mental health, and my first manager was a female.
Right.
And it was not a great experience. But I almost feel like it was because she was so tough. Like there were no excuses. There was no flexibility. It was just so tough. And I guess for my first experience of after university, like full-time working, it was a real shock to the system. Maybe that was part of why I didn't enjoy it. You go from university being all relaxed and whatever, and then you get into the real world and you're like, oh my God, is this what all the adults have been doing all this time? But then when I left that role, I went into real estate for the first time. My boss was a male.
Okay.
Until this day, that was the best boss I've ever had.
Right.
And it's different because he challenged me, but he also really supported me. And it's interesting because technically we've got opposite experiences where I didn't necessarily get that support from my female boss, but I did from the male boss. And he wasn't soft on me at all, but he also was like, right, let's sit together, let's do it together, whatever, what you're afraid of. Because that was sales, and it was, a lot of rejection and a lot of whatever. And he was just kind of getting me, just to be a bit bolder, I guess, and a bit more, taking a bit more risks. And I found that a really interesting experience. It hasn't been the same all the way through. Mm-hmm. I have had some female bosses that are also amazing, but it's interesting to have this conversation about women together in the workplace, because I think we're all doing the best that we can with what we've got, quite honestly.
Absolutely. And I think there's two things that strike me about that as well, which I think I observed a lot in terms of some female leaders, less so now, I really hope less so now, but feeling like they needed to keep their emotions out of leading, be very, directive and not really allow themselves to be how they might be outside of the workplace.
Yeah.
So I think, that is certainly something probably that I felt a little as well in my earlier career. Thankfully, I don't care so much now.
And I love that for you.
Which is one of the benefits about getting older, for sure. And I think also that whole piece around how important your manager is in the workplace to how you feel about your work. I mean, how you felt about a career, an industry, and just how you feel about yourself. And that's why I love working with individual leaders and leadership teams, because I know the impact and the difference that they make, not just to the business and the performance of the business, but to how people feel about coming to work and their level of, how fulfilled they are. Yeah.
You said something really interesting, because that example in terms of leaving emotions out of work, I feel like it's an unwritten female rule. Like, we go into the workplace thinking, if we have any sort of confrontation, or if we have to have a difficult conversation, if we have to talk to our boss about something or whatever, we almost mentally prepare ourselves to not be emotional in that moment, to be very clear, to be very, direct, to know what we want out of the conversation, whatever. And then we come out and we can be like in floods of tears and like, now I can let it out, but I cannot show any weakness. And I cannot show, because that would almost show that I'm not competent, or almost that I doubt myself, or almost, it's almost like we're scared to have that vulnerability for the connotations that come with a woman being vulnerable in the workplace. It's going to put a question mark over, can she really do this? Like, has she got what it takes to do the tough things?
Absolutely. And I see that so much. I mean, I work with a lot of leaders, female leaders, on a one-to-one basis. And, sometimes they'll be, cry and let it all out. And I was like, why in my spaces do I have more people crying more frequently? But I hope and I believe that it's because it's a safe space to do it.
Yeah,
but also, to your point, because it's bottled up. And it is, how can I release my emotions? Because I actually have to demonstrate to everyone that I'm in control at all times. Because if I don't, that will say something about me, as a leader. So I think it's a hard place to be.
It is. And I think also training ourselves to know that we can do hard things, and also allowing other people around us to know that we can do hard things. Even if we do it a bit more vulnerable, or even if we do it a bit afraid, we can definitely still do hard things. I want to talk about some hard truths while we're on these hard things. So what is one thing that no one told you about success, power, or leadership?
That it's really lonely sometimes. I think that's probably been the biggest lesson. You think when you have your own business, particularly in the sort of line of work that I do, where you are surrounded by people, you know, I have my team with me. I work, you know, with clients. I do a lot of face-to-face work as well as, you know, on online. But actually, you have to, you know, ultimately the buck stops with you. You have to make decisions. And sometimes there are things that you just can't share with others, or there are worries that you have that it's not fair to burden others with. And so actually it can be quite lonely. And I think having people around you as well that are, you have to work hard to build the trust, again, that trust word, so that people tell you it as it really is. I think you can find, you know, when you're in that lonely position as a leader, people agree with you more. And people, not because they really agree with you, but they just don't not to
lose
agree.
Their job.
So you have to work really hard to build that open culture so that people can tell you as it really is. And you just don't have your own biases coming into play all of the time.
Psychological safety is incredibly important in the workplace, and, you know, people feeling like they can say what it is that they think as a leader. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of blind spots and a lot of things that you just don't know what people are thinking and feeling. But I want to ask you about you're an entrepreneur. So when you're talking about that and your experiences, you're going to be working way more than a lot of us, okay? Because entrepreneurs actually work a lot more than when you're working for someone else, in my opinion. I have also been an entrepreneur and I've grown businesses, and I definitely know that I work less when I work for someone else than when I work for myself. So with that, how has your experience of burnout been? So have you ever led from a place of burnout, or, you know, just feeling like your cup is completely empty? And if so, how do you refill? You know, how do you get yourself back on track?
I many times, I think, you know, as you say, you work really hard, and when you are building businesses, you're conscious as well that it's up to you to make sure things happen. You're responsible for other people and, you know, their income and careers, etc. as well. So you're never off as well. I think that's the other thing. You know, I'm be it walking the dog or be it laying on a beach, I'm still always thinking about, you know, I'm the one that's always on the plane with my laptop thinking, brilliant, not I've got 4 hours for a film, but I've got 4 hours that I can get this piece of work done with no interruptions. So I think it's really, you know, I have experienced that many, many times. How do I deal with it? Well, sometimes not particularly well. I probably go on too many holidays.
Is that possible?
Yeah, maybe that's not possible. But I like to, you know, I'm the sort of person as well. I like to be active. So for me, you know, back to that piece, for each person it will be different. But for me, saying, oh, just completely switch off and do nothing is not the answer for me. But I like to fill my days with things that bring me joy. And that might be a small moment of joy. It doesn't need to be, you know, something long and extended. But what I really try to do is, and I don't always achieve it, but it's try to live in the moment and try to take notice of small moments of joy rather than expecting perfection. And it might be, oh, the sky is beautiful today. And we live in Dubai, right? The sky looks lovely and blue most days. So, you know, that's great. Looking at the sea, looking at a flower, taking pride in something that one of my sons is doing. So those sorts of things replenish me and remind me, why am I doing this and what's really important to me?
Yeah, I love that. Just the importance of being present and in the moment. And that can be something we really struggle to do, especially when we've got a lot on our plates.
And if you were to ask my sons that, they're like, Mom, can you just stop on your phone and listen to me? So I really try to make an effort, you know, when we're together to really be there.
Yeah. Well, with that being said, what's something that you've had to unlearn in order to really step into your power sort of in this space?
I think it probably links to that personality style that I am quite a million miles an hour and I'm always on the go. I've had to unlearn just always moving to action too fast. Spend more time reflecting and contemplating, but also give others more space to step forward.
Yeah.
Because if I'm constantly stepping into that space, then I'm stepping into that space at the expense of somebody else. So that's something, and it was difficult to unlearn it because, we're creatures of habits and we do the things that we've been noticed, that have been successful for us.
Yeah.
And in the early part of my career, as a graduate and coming into companies, that was rewarded and recognized because I was willing to put my hand up and to do things and to do things that maybe other people weren't mad enough to do. And now I find that can be a strength overplayed and actually can be a real weakness. So I can't say I've unlearned it, but I would say it's a constant battle to remind myself that that's not always the right thing to do or often the right thing to do.
I hear that. And I'm definitely very similar to you. Just spring into action all the time and learning to just pause before you actually do something has actually been really transformational for me. So I completely agree. I want to talk a bit about women and women.
Yes.
That's what we're here to talk about. But I wonder what your thoughts are on women supporting women. Do you feel like it's all just branding and taglines, or do you feel like it's actually a reality? What has your experience been?
I think in recent years, I've been fortunate enough to be part of a number of initiatives that have got real meaning to them. Unfortunately, yes, of course, sometimes it's around, you get the, Women's Day flurry of emails and initiatives, etc., that don't really then seem to continue. But actually, I think there are a number of initiatives that I work with and people that I know of who are doing really important things in this space, from editors of magazines that are putting spotlights on some of the on women's issues, through to some of my clients, my female clients, who are making themselves available, not from a mentoring perspective. I think mentoring is fabulous, right? And I think everyone should have many mentors in their life, and I certainly have, and I think it's a fabulous thing. But at really sponsoring women. I mean, there was a study out recently, I forget who the study was from, but talked about the fact that one of the things that has differentiated in women and men's career is that men have sponsorship. Someone who is actively, not just mentoring and guiding them, but actively promoting them, pushing them forward for opportunities. And that women haven't always had that same experience, or at least not in the volume that men have.
Very true.
I've talked to a number of clients about this and female leaders that I work with who are really doing a lot in this space to make sure that they put on a platform the people who have got talents and make sure that they have access to the right people to be able to showcase their own talents themselves.
Yeah, I definitely hear that. I'm interested to know how your background, so your cultural background, how that has influenced the way that you lead, because obviously you're doing work across different continents. How, especially when you got to this part of the world, but how do you feel like it's influenced the way that you lead?
Well, I think there's a couple. I'd probably give two examples, actually, of things that have shaped me culturally. One from a positive perspective and one not so positive. Okay. So we'll start with the positives. So I mentioned Pam when I was younger, who influenced me, and my mum, both two powerhouse of women who culturally influenced me around what women can do and what shouldn't hold us back. So I always had a view that I could do things because I think of that just ingrained in my background and how I was brought up, and the culture was very supportive and expecting actually that women could do what they wanted to do. So that really shaped me. I come from the UK. Culturally, actually, quite a traditional culture. And actually, one story that I'll share with you around an experience that I had early in my career really shaped me. And I think it was indicative of the working culture in the UK at that time. So I was working for a company. I was hiring talent, graduates, some really smart scientists. In fact, a number of people that have gone on to do some really great things in the world. But we were a technology business and an engineering business, and we weren't a bank or one of the sort of big consulting firms with the high salaries in London. And I woke up one Sunday morning and I picked up the newspaper, the Times, and I opened the business section and it said, well, Alison Munn, I bet your Sunday hasn't got off to its best start. And I was like 26, I think, maybe there, 26. Wow. I thought, what is this? And basically, it was an article by a very traditional male leader who was a writer for the business pages of the Times, basically berating me for being, ever thinking that I could possibly, as he put it, hire the best brains in Britain, and I should sort of get back into my box, because I think I may have given a talk about it and said what we were trying to do. But basically saying, you're not a banker, you're not offering big money, you're not this, you're not that. So stop trying to think that you could compete in that world. So that was a real, it's a story personal to me, but to your question around that cultural undertone, I think that was really, there was in 20 years ago, and maybe some of it even exists still today, where tradition was all certain jobs went to certain people from certain schools and certain backgrounds, and that was anyone that was questioning that status quo. And I think that really did shape me, actually. At first it devastated me, but then back to that peace and that quality I think you and I both share. Yeah. Let's get back on and see what we could do about it. What can we control? Yeah. And I was determined, actually, to not show him particularly, but to show the world that actually a different world should exist. And it might not exist today, but not everyone is driven only by money or by tradition, etc., and that actually talent can come from many different places. Yeah. And I felt, it's a key part of what I feel is important is giving talent from wherever they come from, whatever their backgrounds, the voice and the opportunity. And I'm really pleased, I have no idea what happened to this person now, but I'm really pleased that 20 years on, there's been such a shift in terms of some of the hiring practices. Now, we all know that it's not where it needs to be, but thankfully things have moved on.
Things have definitely moved on, although there's still so much work to be done. And I'm also interested in how you found it here. So you've moved to this part of the world, you're working in the GCC as well. Are there any leadership challenges that you feel are specific to leading here in this part of the world? Have you experienced that?
I think that it's such a fast-paced environment here. One of the challenges that I see for people in the workplace, but often for females in the workplace, particularly here, is because it's such a fast-paced environment, because there's so much ambition here and there's opportunity here, but it also means that there's, it's highly competitive and people work incredibly long hours, more so I would say than in many European countries. And I think that's a real struggle, actually, for anyone in the workplace, but often for women who, take the responsibility for more of the caring responsibilities, etc. And it doesn't matter that, we're fortunate to live here in a society where, there are people that can support and help you. But actually, as, certainly me as a mother, and particularly when I was a mother of young children, you want to be there for your children and you want to spend time. So I think one of the differences that I see here is the working hours. Yeah. And with there's so many positives in terms of opportunity, but there is a real pressure on people to always be on. That's true across the world, but I think particularly, in this region. I think it's also fair to say that the world is shifting and the balance of females coming into the workplace is now being addressed. There are more females coming into the workplace, but it's probably fair to say that some organisations are not fully prepared for what that means. Yeah. So I think companies generally are having to think, actually, what does it mean to have more gender balance in the workplace? Yeah. So I think those are some of the differences that I've seen here and some of the impacts for women in the workplace.
Yeah. It's interesting. So as you're talking, I'm thinking about it and also thinking about my experience. And as we spoke about before, when we were sort of catching up on a call, I was saying that before I moved to this part of the world, there was a lot of people kind of saying, "Oh, are you sure you want to go there? You're a woman. Your freedom's going to be taken away," and all of these kind of, I guess, quite outdated thoughts and
norms,
ideologies. Yeah. And I've never been more free, which sounds really weird, doesn't it? But I've never, it's weird because yes, you work a lot longer here, and yet because of the way that life is set up, and like you said, because you can get more help, and you're working more, but you're hopefully in a lot of instances earning more, and all of these factors, it allows you to live a different quality of life as a woman. That you're not as flat out in certain ways as I was in the UK, which sounds weird because I am still super busy. Like I'm not any less busy, but it's just more even the opportunity to do things like this and to pursue things that I'm deeply passionate about in the UK, it would have just been like a time factor of
absolutely,
I can't find the time to do this because I don't necessarily have the resource to have the help and support and all of these kind of things, so it's definitely been a positive experience.
Absolutely. I feel very safe here as a woman as well. And there's such a high level of respect for women in society generally here.
Yeah.
So I think those are really important qualities. And the quality of life here, as you say, is great.
Absolutely. Now, just to go back slightly, because you mentioned about, being a mother and obviously being pulled in all these different directions. How do you feel that motherhood has shaped your leadership?
Yeah, this is really interesting, actually, because I've got a story I'll share with you about how my child has shaped my leadership, actually.
Okay.
So from motherhood, I think one thing motherhood does is help you to prioritize your time ruthlessly. So motherhood generally gives you a really big lesson about what's important to me and how will I ruthlessly prioritize my time so that I focus on the things that are really important. So I think that is a motherhood piece.
Yeah.
One thing that I've learned a lot from my sons, and particularly my youngest son came with me to Stockholm last year on a client engagement, and was fabulous, was doing videos and some of the socials, etc., and all of the things that he's so much better at than me. But actually, one of my most memorable moments was after the event. We sat in the hotel over dinner and we just reflected on things, and he just asked me some great questions that just grounded me in some of the things, back to that live in the moment. So actually, it really also taught me a lesson in terms of make sure you make space for everyone around you and allow them to take the lead in certain situations. So it was a real lesson from him as well. So many lessons from motherhood.
I love that. I'm also interested in, you spoke earlier about the fact that you've had many mentors and many people that have been sort of influential in where you are now.
Yes.
When I talk about leadership, I often talk about it with the analogy of a Sherpa, and that us as leaders, our role is very similar to a Sherpa in that we are trying to climb the mountain ourselves, but we simultaneously have to help others to climb as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
And along that journey, we're offering them support, but we're also challenging them and having that equal level. I wonder if you've ever had any female Sherpas that you feel like have really created opportunity for you, or really just been super impactful into where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think some of the females that I've spoken about, Pam was probably my earliest mentor, and I still really miss being able to pick up the phone to her to just say, can I just run this past you?
Yeah.
So I think, she, shaped the career I chose, and she gave me advice and support throughout, throughout my journey and throughout my life, actually. The woman that I spoke to you about in terms of, that reassured me and guided me then, she was an incredible mentor to me. And actually, another female, Kath Lowy, was an amazing mentor to me. She was not my boss, but she was a senior leader in the organisation, more senior than me. And she, ultimately opened up opportunities for me to travel to Australia on secondment with the company that I worked for, because she knew I was passionate about getting some overseas experience, and she also knew that I probably would do that independent of the company. So she really created opportunities for me and had to work really hard to influence others in the organisation who felt I would be better placed elsewhere in terms of their return on investment. But she fought for me and what I wanted.
Oh, I love that. Well, on that then, do you believe that women can really have it all? Or are we all just really exhausted and no one is actually telling the truth? What do you think?
Well, ask me on different days and I might have a different perspective on that, I suspect. I think that it's very difficult to have it all. I think the key is defining what all is for you.
Very true.
Rather than it being everything. You know, what is your all? What is your purpose? What is driving and important to you? And then aiming for that. I think the mistake that I've made, and that many females make, and it's not even necessarily a choice, it's like by necessity, is, you know, trying unsuccessfully often, or certainly in my case, to balance everything that you, and trying to be perfect in everything. It's like, I've got to be a super mom, I've got to cook amazing food, I've got to run a business, I've got to see my friends, I've got to, I'm not keeping fit, I need to keep fit more. And actually it's working out, you know, actually what can give and not beating yourself up about it. And I think that's where we can truly have what all is for us as an individual. I think it's the external expectation that we feel we have to live up to sometimes that becomes so difficult. And when we can unburden ourselves of that and say, actually, what's really important to me, you know, and to the people that I care about the most, and focusing on that.
Yeah, it's interesting when you say this, because I think about my own experience as a mother, and I think one of the interesting moments for me was realizing that it's not just about the expectations that society has put on us. Actually, I had a lot of expectations of myself that I didn't realize that I had. So no matter what I was doing, I kept feeling like I'm failing at this because I should be doing it like this. And now I'm failing at this because I should be doing it like that. And so if we are mothers and we feel like I'm not present enough with my kids, like I missed this thing that they did, if they lost their tooth, or like, I don't know, it could be anything, right? And then you go to work and you're like, I'm failing at this because people are staying behind, people are giving more hours, people are doing whatever, and I also am not doing that, so I'm also failing at that. And we can get in this whole guilt trip and beating ourselves up quite easily. But I love your answer, which is that define what all is. Because I think all in the way that we talk about it when I asked you the question is literally everything, literally everything you can think of, like being a good friend, being a good like sister or daughter or niece or whatever, being a credible mother, being so great at work and really influential, working out, eating right, remembering to hydrate yourself and drink water, the list goes on. And it's like impossible because I think we're just like literally exhausting ourselves.
Absolutely. It's impossible for any human. Absolutely. And when you can let go of that a little bit and give yourself a break, I think you can find your all and your happiness. But it's a constant struggle, right? And we never get it right all of the time. So this conversation that we are having has been a lot about becoming, right? Becoming Alison Munn and your journey and all of that. So if I ask you to finish this sentence, for me, becoming her means accepting myself.
I really like that. I really like that. So I was just thinking about it when you said it, because I was like, acceptance is such a core word that like we use a lot, but it's easier said than done. Accepting yourself at every part of your evolution as well, you know? Having compassion on yourself.
Absolutely.
What parts of yourself have you had to sort of grow or stretch to sort of become the person that you are now?
there's an analogy and an image that I have in my head, and I don't know if it translates to Dubai. It will do in terms of the UK, I would imagine.
Okay.
And that's basically the picture of a Duracell bunny, like always on. So I'm always on. So the piece that I've had to grow and stretch and change the most is like learning when to switch off.
Yeah.
Learning when to just let the batteries lay down and recharge.
Give them a rest.
For a bit. Give them a rest. Give everyone a rest. Yes.
Fair enough. So what does the becoming the next version of you look like?
I get great pleasure and reward from helping others to succeed, from helping people to be their best version. And thankfully, in the role that I do, both as a mother, but also in terms of my company, it's all about helping people achieve their potential. So actually, for me, that next step is absolutely what drives me and motivates me and is what's next for me. So giving that back and being able to work with people who maybe underestimate their power and their potential and their talent, and helping them to unlock that.
Yeah, wonderful. What conversation do you think that more women in leadership should be having?
I think it's about, how do you be authentically you in the workplace, and how do you stop trying to be an image of what you think perfection should be and just be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, that acceptance word coming up again, isn't it?
Absolutely. And back to the piece around it, having it all, and what does that mean for you?
It's kind of tied in, but if you could give one piece of advice to the next generation of women that are coming, the most important thing that you could say to them, what would it be?
Trust your instinct and give yourself a break.
I wish someone had said that to me many years ago. Give yourself a break. Yeah, I think we feel like what we're doing is always life and death.
Absolutely.
Like it's always everything on the line all of the time.
Absolutely. And it's never quite good enough.
Yeah.
And actually, in the physical and metaphorical context, give yourself a break.
Literally. Well, tell us a bit about the work you're doing now, like the mission behind it and who it's for.
Yeah, so I've talked a little bit about my mission and the thing that drives me. And, we spoke about when we met, when I was speaking. And I like to think that the reason that I can speak and engage with an audience is because I love what I do. And what I do is all around helping leaders, talent in organisation and leadership teams create the environment for performance, because people can operate at their best. So I help leaders and teams to unlock their talents, to define how they can all perform at their best, but ultimately create an environment that not only they can perform and enjoy being in, but that creates the context for performance of the organisation. Yeah. And for me, you can only perform at your best when you are in an environment where you feel supported, you feel safe, you feel challenged, and you feel supported. And so that's what I do. I work with leaders and leadership teams to help them create the context for that performance and engagement.
Yeah, I think what you're doing is so important because we are in this digital age and we're in this time where people go to work in organizations for the culture. And before, people used to go to work because they wanted a particular job title and a career.
Absolutely.
And you didn't mind if your manager was horrible to you or terrible, because this is what we do. We go and we get a job and we provide for our families and we work up our way up the ranks. And that's not where we are. Now people are going to companies because the leaders are influencers and because they like the values that stand, in that company. And,
Absolutely.
We're having different conversations now when people are like, should I join this company? Let me look at whether I would belong. Let me look at what the sense of community is like. Let me look at the culture. We've never really had such a focus on these things until now. So
Absolutely.
The work that you do is incredibly important.
Yeah, I think that the workplace of the future and what younger people coming into the workplace today are expecting is very different, thank goodness, right? And actually, it's not just enough to provide a job and to pay good money. You have to create an environment that people want to be in. You have to have a vision that people want to follow. You can't be a leader without any followers, and you can't do that in the old-fashioned way of command and control. So actually helping leaders to navigate that and to be the best that they can be, not only for themselves, but to create the environment for others, is something that Insight Worldwide, my company, does. We may work with leaders on a one-to-one basis or work with complete leadership teams, often over 1 or 2 years, really helping them to fulfill their personal and career and business ambitions.
Yeah, it's super important. I also think as a woman, I have this thought a lot where I'm like, I could either be at home with my kids or doing this. And it kind of becomes a bit more, the choice becomes more important as to where I place myself because of what it will require of me. And if the environment requires too much of me, it's too expensive, because then when I go home, the quality of mother I am is not what I want it to be. So it's just a lot more weight on it, I think, as you go through different life stages, but that's definitely my experience. I have some rapid fire questions for you. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, so, it's more finish the sentence.
Okay.
I lead best when I stop trying to
do it all.
The boldest move I ever made as a leader was
relocating to Dubai.
Very bold. Power to me looks like happiness. You're the second woman to say that, and I really love it. I was always surprised. I'd say power, happiness. I'm like, wow, it's really good. I love it for us. Success used to mean, and now it means.
Success used to mean career success to me. And now it means back to that happiness world, fulfillment and balance.
I love that. Okay, so before we wrap up, if someone is listening to this and they're like, I have really enjoyed hearing everything that Alison has to say, I want more of this woman in my life, where will they be able to find you?
Well, you can certainly find me on LinkedIn, Alison Munn, and Insight Worldwide on LinkedIn. But reach out to me. My email's there as well. I'm always up for good conversations and debates and discussions. So reach out to me there.
Perfect. I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure there's lots that people will take away from this. People that have been influential, giving yourself rest and not jumping into action all of the time. Just so many key points. So thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you for having me,
Thank
Jess.
you.